The journal is uncovered in the Borges home, including the details like cover your shoes with bags, wear clothes you don't care about. The Facebook chat group called The Wild Things led investigators to Mathews' friends and co-conspirators, Jonathan, Angel, Nazario, and Julius, the intruders. Police heard a troublesome story from Angel. He said that Lee had told him he had done something bad. Apparently, after Matthew led Lee Manuel to the river, the other boys robbed his house, then went to a different home to lay low. Matthew called one of them around this time and was put on speakerphone. All 4 of the teens heard Matthew allegedly say that his hands were covered in blood, and that he had done what he needed to do, that Lee had come at him wrong. He wouldn't shut up, so Matthew stabbed him over and over on his stomach and back. Eventually, Lee gave up. He cut his head off so Lee couldn't be identified. After Lee Manuel's body is discovered, his family voices feelings that police treated Lee's disappearance as a runaway case, not considering that he was likely in peril. His mother said that she had just been to the police station to check on the progress of the search. She recalled how she did not see her son's missing poster hanging on the wall, but a poster for a missing dog named Karma was. Lee's grandmother said that they were both poor and Hispanic, implying this made them less than worthy of police support. But the Lawrence Police Department refuted the family's allegations, pointing out that the morning after the missing persons report was filed, they posted it on their Facebook page. It included the detective's name and phone number, and they tweeted it as well. After 10 days, they needed assistance and provided record of when they requested help from the state police, who reported on November 28th. When Matthew had originally brought them to the riverbank the first time he was questioned, police say he deliberately took them in the opposite direction of where Lee Manuel's body and head were eventually found. Lee's hands were never recovered. Lee Manuel's family members remained unconvinced. The day after his body is recovered and identified, 15-year-old Mathews Borges is arrested and held without bond. He was charged with first-degree murder and extreme cruelty and atrocity, would be tried as an adult, and was facing 30 years to life. In August of 2017, the defense filed motions to suppress the statements Matthew had given police when he was unaccompanied and not Mirandized. According to Matthew, "I didn't think I could tell him to leave. He did not speak to my mother or father before asking me questions. He did not give me any warning about my right not to speak to him." Recall that the week after Lee Manuel disappeared, Lawrence police questioned Matthew at the Borges home for several hours, before questioning him further later at the station. That was when he changed up his story. Matthew now said that he told police he would go with them because "I was afraid of what would happen if I said no." A separate motion referenced a witness statement saying that Lawrence police had told them they had spoken with over 50 people. However, the defense contended only 20 names were on the potential witness list upon discovery. The defense wanted to know the identities of the 30 so-called mystery witnesses police had interviewed. They also filed a motion requesting a bill of particulars, wanting to know more detailed information about the specific crimes Matthew was accused of. The defense wanted to know if the state thought he had acted alone, and if not, why no other suspects had been arrested. No motive had been revealed to the public. It took 2 years for Mathews Borges to come to trial, and it began on April 29, 2019. The first 2 individuals to testify were Matthew's ex-girlfriend Lawrene and the girl he had been dating, Stephanie. Lawrene testified that the time he was escorted from the lunchroom was the only time she had ever seen Matthew yell at anyone. and that she'd never seen him fight with anyone. She also admitted under cross that she never told police that Mathew was jealous of her relationship with Lee Manuel. The defense accused the state of using childish texts, Facebook messages, and journal entries to concoct a motive of jealousy that didn't exist. In their opening statement, the defense warned the jury to be suspicious of the prosecution's key witnesses, considering that they had all admitted to participating in the robbery that seemingly led to Lee's death. He called them unreliable. The apparent lack of evidence was highlighted too, and Mathew's attorney made sure the jury realized that the state had no blood, no DNA, no murder weapon, or crime scene. Police hadn't even recovered the victim's hands. Stephanie testified about her relationship with both boys and recalled the messages she had received from Mathew about wanting to kill someone and preparing her to see his dead eyes. She said she tried to help him sort out those feelings without violence as much as she could, but she was a child herself. Lee Manuel's grandmother testified through tears about the last time she'd seen her grandson. Detective Hegarty recounted his investigation and Mathew's interviews. The coroner testified that Lee Manuel had been viciously stabbed 75 times, with more than half of the wounds being inflicted post-mortem. The autopsy had taken 11 painstaking hours. Too much trauma had taken place to tell if he had been decapitated while still alive. All 4 of Mathew's co-conspirators testified about hearing his confession on the night they robbed Lee's home. None of them were arrested or charged with anything. After the prosecution rested, the defense moved to have the case dismissed on lack of evidence, a motion which was swiftly denied. Mathews Borges did not testify on his own behalf, and the defense rested without having called any witnesses. At closing, the defense focused on the unanswered questions that still lingered. Attorneys pointed out that even though the state had called 24 witnesses, all of those hours of testimony provided no answers as to who actually killed Lee, and that neither did the reams of transcripts of chats which just showed children talking like children with other children. In regards to the co-conspirators, the defense called Mathew their get-out-of-jail-free card. None of them faced any charges, not even for the burglary. The defense found it hard to believe that 4 teenage boys wouldn't go directly to the river and look for the dead body, or tell anyone about Mathew's confession, even after Lee had been missing for almost 2 weeks. Every witness said they got along. The motive about jealousy is just manufactured. Mathews Borges and the Viloria-Paulino family and you deserve the truth. They didn't get that in this court. You can't rely on their theory, and if you can't rely on the prosecution's case, you just can't convict. The prosecutor said, "There's no hidden mystery. The case is right in front of you. Every piece of evidence points to him. Maybe it's hard to believe that a 15-year-old kid could kill someone, but that's just the world we live in today. He's the only one. He killed Lee. The defendant took everything away from him, took who he was and who he was going to be." Throughout the almost 2-week trial, Lee Manuel's swarm of family members wore black t-shirts with his picture on the front and the words, "We want answers, we need answers, we want justice," on the back. The jury deliberated for 9 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Mathew's attorney addressed the media afterwards, saying, "We're disappointed, but he had a fair trial. We thought we had a defense, but the jury obviously worked hard and they did their best to come to a verdict. We just don't agree with it." Mathews Borges is now 18 and will be formally sentenced by the judge on July 9, 2019. He faces life in prison, with parole possible after 30 years since he committed the murder as a juvenile. Following the guilty verdict, Lee Manuel Viloria-Paulino's family stated that they felt happy, but Lee's mother, Katiuska Paulino, remained convinced Mathews Borges didn't act alone, saying, "I never felt convinced this was only Matthew. Everyone else involved is still out there. They can get away with it and do it to someone else. And Matthew will still be young when he gets out of prison. I will never have my son again." As always, thanks for stopping by. Next week, I'll be at CrimeCon in New Orleans, so make sure to check out Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Killer Kids Pod to see who Jamie from Murderish Podcast and I run into. I'm slowly unveiling a new logo on social media as well, designed by my wonderfully talented and supportive Patreon supporter and listener, Bree. I can't tell you how excited I am to show it off. Thanks again, Bree. And shout out to our newest Patreon supporter, Lawrene. I truly appreciate everyone's continued support. The True Crime Podcast Festival will be taking place in Chicago on July 13th. Check the show notes for a link to get your tickets now if you're in the area. Come to the group on Facebook and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you possibly get the chance. It's so helpful, and I'm truly thankful. But most importantly, lovelies, and until next time, don't be scared.
At the Unseen Podcast, we look at cases of missing people, unresolved investigations, and above all, we focus on UK true crime. So if you want to listen to UK cases and care about little-known stories that might have been forgotten about, then we are the podcast for you. Join me, Caprice, every Sunday as we delve into these stories. You can find the Unseen Podcast anywhere you are currently listening, and I hope you can join me in discussing forgotten and unresolved cases.
Do you love true crime, history, and mysterious happenings? Every week on the Cult of Domesticity, a guest and I discuss a different historical happening, a true crime story, or whatever strikes our fancy. Join me, Courtney, every Thursday to hear some fascinating tales from some fascinating people, wherever you listen to podcasts.